Well, greetings and welcome to fallacy number 6, appeal to pity, also known as the Argumentum ad Miserecordiam. Miserecordiam is just a fancy way of saying pity or mercy. So when we appeal to pity, we're appealing to another human emotion. Again, since we're all humans, we all are prone from time to time, and rightfully so, to feel pity. I can remember a couple of examples when my children were young, bringing to me injured animals of different kinds. I remember my daughter Zoe bringing an injured bird in from the backyard and saying, "Daddy, the bird's hurt. We've got to help it. We've got to help it. If we don't, it's going to die." And I remember thinking to myself, that's correct. It's going to die. It may be true that this injured bird is going to die, and it's irrelevant to the mission of the parent family. And ultimately, that's kind of what becomes the determining factor for me, is what is my mission as a father? Is it to save all of the birds that are injured, squirrels and so on? I have to kind of ask myself. Maybe I can fit that in occasionally, but I certainly can't make it a regular course of action. So it may be true that the bird will die, but it's irrelevant. Well, that's kind of harsh. Doesn't it sound kind of harsh? Because we want to experience pity. We want to have pity on things, but we can't always let pity determine what our course of action is going to be in a given issue. So, as always, we want to ask that first question, what is the issue? So when my daughter brings to me an injured squirrel or bird, I have to ask, what is the issue here? What am I able to do? What should I do, given a larger collection of competing interests? So let me just read the definition. The definition, we have a kind of a long definition in the book. It goes this way. Arguments, appeal to pity, are arguments that distract by making the audience feel sorry for the speaker or someone on behalf of whom the speaker is arguing. This fallacy appeals to our sense of compassion. Like other appeals to emotion, it tries to get us to accept certain views or courses of action by causing us to sympathize with the speaker rather than by providing good and careful reasoning. And so I needed to provide some careful reasoning when Zoe brought to me that bird and asked some questions about what the issue really was. How about you? Can you remember some examples of appeal to pity from your own life, either appeals you yourself have made or maybe appeals that were made unto you?
When a little kid skins his or her knee, to go, "Mommy, I hurt my knee. Can I have something sweet to cheer me up?"
"Mommy, my knee hurts. Ice cream. Ice cream." Yes, that's why not take advantage of the situation, right? You don't get ice cream too often. A skinned knee might warrant it. Any other examples come to mind?
My sister every now and then will say, "Ellen, if you don't play with me right now, I'm just going to die. You need to play with me." No. Got homework.
Yes. And how old is your little sister?
7.
So, you probably don't say, "Kirsten, that's a fallacy," but you do have to respond with some reasoning maybe at a time like that. Other examples?
One time I was watching a video on global warming, and they showed footage of these polar bears who'd been swimming in the ocean for hours and hours, and they were starting to drown because they couldn't find ice patches to float on. And personally, I wondered, why didn't they save them if they're sitting there filming these bears? They're trying to make you feel sorry for them. But they're kind of playing on your emotions to help the bears. And maybe it is good too, but they should give you clear reasoning for it. They shouldn't just show you pictures of
That's a good point. Sometimes you might argue for a particular course of action, say, and you might appeal to pity legitimately. But if that's your only appeal, and there aren't additional reasons for why we should say save the polar bears, then the images you're seeing and the voiceover that's saying this bear will probably die. We probably need more than just pity in most cases to determine a course of action. It's quite common to appeal to pity when there are legitimate needs, but sometimes legitimate needs can be kind of exaggerated to manipulate us into a course of action without a lot of thinking. Take, for example, hunger. You've seen magazine advertisements or other kinds of ads on television, perhaps, for food relief organizations. Say hunger in Africa. probably a legitimate concern. We should be concerned about the hungry. But how can that be? How can a commercial, say, for relieving people who are hungry become an appeal to pity and become a fallacy?
They could, rather than telling you how their program will help feed them and showing you like maybe statistics of people who have been fed, they could instead just show you pictures of these emaciated people, and that would be playing on your emotions and not giving you reasoning.
Right, because you have to decide if you're going to give to this organization, right? Because the ad is going to be for a particular organization. They're asking you for your money. You probably would want to know, is that organization doing a good job? Because there are probably several organizations trying to do something similar. So what about their record? How much of every dollar is really getting to feed people and help people and so forth? Does the organization have a reputation for integrity and honesty and so forth? So there's still other questions to ask. You might be moved by pity to help hungry people. That's probably a good thing. But still, there's some thinking to do before we part with our money. How about in a legal context? And we'll go over to Jolie Hodge, our political and legal correspondent. When in, say, in trials, court cases, do we see pity, the appeal to pity fallacy?
Oh, well, I guess we can... We've all seen movies and television shows and so forth where a court case is being presented. Perhaps the defendant is cast in a particularly pitiful light to garner that sort of sympathetic, compassionate response from the jury, perhaps, or maybe from the judge, depending on the situation. Perhaps the person who, the victim, is also cast in such a light. Maybe they do or do not deserve such treatment themselves. We're all, the jurors have to determine a lot when they're sitting there watching and listening to a court case. Part of what they need to do is to determine not just what the facts are, but do they believe who is telling, do they believe the prosecutor and the defense attorney? Do they believe the testimony? And sometimes emotions can be part of that, whether or not you feel like you can trust someone or you don't feel like you can trust someone. Do you feel like they've gotten, that the defendant had, a really tough life? Maybe that defendant came from a broken home where the father or mother was an alcoholic. Maybe there were beatings involved. Maybe there were all kinds of things that kind of set this poor kid up for a life of crime or a life where he had to fend for himself. And, is it really the best thing for this young man or woman to go into, a prison situation? Or maybe this is the break that the kid really needed his whole life, that kind of thing. And you have to determine as a juror or as a judge, is that pity that you're feeling for a hard life really part of what needs to be part of the evaluation process or not, perhaps. It's tough to do, because we do, as human beings, we want to be compassionate to one another. We want to extend that hand to help someone when they're in need, give them a break. Maybe this will be the time that they turn things around for themselves. So, it can be really difficult to navigate through all of the emotions and facts and things.
So it seems like when we're looking at these appeal to emotion fallacies, we have to constantly look for balance, because the human emotions can be legitimate. And in the case that you're describing, we have to balance maybe some pity that we legitimately can feel for a defendant with other factors, like what's good for the rest of society and justice according to the law and so forth. So when the appeal, when pity begins to kind of eclipse other considerations, that's when you're moving into the realm of fallacy, when you stop thinking about other issues or the other sides, other facets of an argument.
Or if the information isn't presented in such a way where the pity becomes the overarching theme when it was really, maybe the kid's family, maybe, the parents just recently got divorced 6 months ago. So that really hasn't been part of the, the entire history of the child. And maybe there was one argument with the parent last week and the kid just got really upset because he didn't get his way. And that spawned this behavior. You could perhaps eclipse the truth, with this pitiful storyline, where now pity becomes not just the the overarching theme, but it becomes the story, and the truth is nowhere to be found anymore. So you have to be, and we can feel that pretty easily for someone,
Balance and wisdom. Well, now let's see if we can conjure up some fallacies of pity. Noah, how might you turn a request for a cup of Starbucks mocha latte grande? That would be nice to have. This happens to be empty. Wish it were full. How could you turn a request into an appeal to pity?
By the child, I'm presuming, requesting the coffee from their parental authority could portray themselves in a somewhat pitiful and desperate state, as if coffee were the only means of saving them from a day of utter depression and lethargy. So they could argue that if they didn't have this coffee in the morning, it would ruin their day completely, and that it would be their parents' act. Their parents would be ruining their day by not giving them coffee.
Ellen, how about you role-playing that? I'm the parental authority.
Dad, if you don't get me Starbucks, I'm just going to be so tired today. I'm not going to be able to think. I'm just going to have a horrible day, and it'll be all your fault. Give me coffee, please.
A little guilt thrown in there as well. Anybody else want to try? No? Okay, you can take a request for almost anything and turn it into pity, and you often see pity coming when there is a request, when something is being asked for. Pity can be appealed to. Well, maybe one final illustration, which is also in the book, is the way that even political figures can appeal to pity for advocating various kinds of bills or legislation. Legislation. Let's try that one more time. Legislation. Jolie, why don't you tell us about that? How do politicians sometimes appeal to pity to try and get their work done?
Well, if I was a politician and I was lobbying, or maybe I'm not lobbying, but as a politician, I'm acting. As a politician, you're responsible for entire segments of society, not just one group. You're entitled for all of the segments of society. And sometimes getting a little extra for some of your more needy constituents, could also be, it could maybe thicken the wallet of a few other folks at the same time. There might be, and people are savvy enough to know that. That people make money in good deeds. People aren't spending all of their hard-earned money, all of their savings, and depleting themselves entirely when they extend the hand of, graciousness and, goodwill to other people that are in need. And people know that. So how does a politician go about arguing for extra money to be spent and, extra funds, extra programs, extra organizations to get involved, knowing that all of those people stand to earn quite a bit of money, and a lot of those folks may be their friends as well, and they may do business with them quite frequently. Well, to overshadow, perhaps, all of the money that's going to be made in the background here and behind the scenes, they're going to frame the argument in terms of the needy family, in terms of the destitute child, in terms of the families that don't have running water, and the plight of the individual, so that we overlook perhaps how it's all being done behind the scenes and focus on just the end game, just on what may be the outcome for it. And politicians are pretty savvy about doing that pretty regularly.
I heard this happen on both sides of a debate when it came to going to war in Iraq, where folks who were for the war were saying, if we don't go into Iraq, this horrible dictator is going to continue to oppress and murder and kill. The untold suffering is occurring, and we're just going to allow it to perpetuate if we don't act. And then, of course, those who were saying we should not go to war, predictably, how might they appeal to pity? What do you think?
The toll it's going to take on the American citizen and on the families with their husbands going off to war to fight is going to be huge, and this is going to be such a long endeavor, and it's just going to hurt our economy,
Yes, we don't have the money. It's going to cost billions of dollars. We'll suffer economically. We'll suffer personally. Our men, our sons, our brothers, our fathers are going to die. We're going to shed our blood for this. So it's interesting how on either side of a debate, pity can be appealed to. Okay, well, we'll let that summarize the appeal to pity. We'll be back next time for fallacy number 7, which is a fun one. It's the ad populum fallacy, which means appealing to the mob or to the people. We'll see you then.